Righty. There we go. Okay. Welcome, everybody. This is the first of our expert series for the year, which I'm really excited about. We are going to welcome Lydia today. Lydia is a registered dietitian. She's been with us for a while, helping our team for a while. So she's been here. If you all haven't gotten to see her speak to the team before, there's three, I think, other sessions that we've done, 2 to 3 other sessions that we've done that are posted. I can post that to the group or send it out via email if anybody wants, but she's a wealth of information. Lydia has been a dietitian for 10 years, and she's been working in the sports field for that time too. Her expertise is really women's health and sports nutrition and GI difficulties, particularly with the sports community. So we lean into her for all kinds of really important information, especially as we get into those niche topics for marathoning and ultra marathoning, and things that can present on race day is a little tricky. So I am excited to do that today. Lydia is a fairly recent new mama. So Pauline is about a year now, which is really exciting. I know, very exciting. And so she now has some expertise in postpartum as well, which probably leans heavily into your women's health expertise anyway. So excited to hear some about that as well. But anyways, I will hand it over to her. She's going to present to us for 20 or 30 minutes, and then we're just going to open it up and see what you all have individually that we can talk about, that we can help you with. Well, she can help you with, I can learn. And yeah, it'll be a good 45 minutes to an hour. So I'm excited to say welcome, Lydia. Thank you for coming back, and you have the floor.
Awesome. Thank you, Asher. Like Asher said, we're going to spend some time focusing on GI specifically today. And that doesn't mean that I can't answer questions on other areas of sports nutrition and everything, but this is something that in conversations I have had with athletes a lot recently. Asher has noticed with her athletes, all of you guys. So this is I think where we wanted to kind of keep most of our conversation for at least 20 minutes or so. But do not fret if you have other questions that have nothing to do with GI, absolutely here to help try to answer those for you. So I did put together a little slide deck just so that way, if you want to take any notes or things like that, you can have access to that. So give me a moment here to share this. Okay. Okay, 1 second here, actually. Okay. We all good here? Everyone can see it? Thumbs up. Yes. Okay, cool. So running and fueling for your GI comfort, because let's be real, running is hard enough as it is. We do not like to have GI discomfort. That's just not fun at all. So we're going to talk about pre, during, post, and dive deep into it. We're going to do some cursory kind of beginning kind of things, but I want to dive deep into that because a lot of times people are like, yep, I know what to do before, I know what to do during, I know what to do after. But sometimes we get that extra layer when we're talking about GI specific. Okay. Oh, why is it not? Okay. There we go. So we're going to talk the before, during, and after runs. We'll talk about carb loading basics, whole foods versus sports nutrition specific for during your runs, the age-old kind of debate of carb versus calorie intake during runs. We'll talk about ingredients that you should try to avoid if you are suffering from GI issues. Sometimes we have to eliminate those things. So I'll give you a list of different ingredients to avoid. And then how to avoid / solve GI issues when you're actually in those runs, trying to kind of be in the moment solving, which is sometimes difficult, but if I can give you some tips there, it's always helpful. So before runs, who should be doing pre-fuel before runs? Everyone. Everyone should be taking in something before their runs. There's really not anybody that is eliminated from this recommendation. It's going to help your performance. It's going to help your recovery overall. So trying to take in something before. You want to focus in on simple and easy to digest foods. So this can be bread, rice, bananas. I have rice on there twice, I see. Oats, pasta, rice, just very easy to digest. A lot of these foods, very simple, usually don't cause many people any digestive issues. If you need to be gluten-free, then just choose a easy to digest gluten-free option. So a lot of different ways you can make sure that you're getting easy to digest foods. If you have difficulty actually eating, this is something I hear very, excuse me. This is something I hear very often. Difficulty actually eating, chewing something, swallowing something, especially with our morning runners. Try liquid nutrition, things like Scratch Labs, Tailwind, Morton drinks. These are great options to help with kind of getting in something right before a run that usually digest really easily. If you want to keep like real food as an option for pre-fuel, apple juice, clear liquids. Try to steer clear of orange juice or those sorts of things, but like apple juice would be a good kind of pre-fuel option that's liquid nutrition as well, if you want to go that route of whole food kind of focus. When should you be doing this before a run? I kind of broke it down for morning and evening, afternoon runners, because kind of two different ways. If it's a morning run, 30 to 60 minutes before the run. You don't really need to wake up 2 hours before, eat, and then try to run. So 30 to 60 minutes before your run. For your afternoon, evening runs, either 2 hours before or can do all the way up to 60 minutes before. If it's 2 hours before, then you're going to be doing a little bit more of a meal. So think sandwich, think a plate that might have starches like a rice or oats or a pasta, and then a protein and maybe even some vegetables. That would be like the 2 hours prior. If it's like 60 minutes before a run, that's going to be a snack. Maybe it's going to be a banana, maybe adding peanut butter with it. Maybe it's going to be a piece of toast with peanut butter. Something like that would be that 60 minutes before a run option. Carbohydrate loading. A lot of people have heard about carb loading. It can be one of those kind of, everybody has their opinion on it. Everybody thinks it works for them, doesn't work for them. Lots of different opinions on this. I'm going to go based off of the scientific evidence and less on the opinion-based things, but I'll kind of touch on some of those that I hear a lot about. So point blank, scientifically, carbohydrate loading is taking in carbohydrates, 8 to 12 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight per day. And this would be done usually two days maximum before an actual endurance activity. Most of the time it's done for long runs, or it might be done for a race that's usually a half marathon minimum, marathon for sure, or longer distances. So 8 to 12 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight per day. Now, that's a lot of different things, so I like to put a little example. If you are a runner who weighs, let's say, 154 pounds, that would mean you were targeting between 560 to 840 grams of carbs per day during loading. Now, a lot of times people's eyes get really big when they see those numbers, and that's not uncommon to see that. And oftentimes I know people can struggle with seeing that number. So I oftentimes recommend, like, you don't want to jump straight to the 8 to 12 grams, just like we'll talk about what you should do in the beginning stages of pre-fuel. You don't jump straight to 8 to 12 grams. You might start with 4 grams to 6 grams. Start with like a lower level and you build yourself up to where you could tolerate this. Most people would not be able to tolerate this right out the gate. This would be something that would be somebody who's worked on this, worked on their way of getting it to this point. Once again, keep it very simple. Simple carbohydrates, trying to avoid the fiber as much as we can, just because that fiber is going to make it more difficult to digest the carbohydrates and also can sometimes cause GI issues. So we keep it very simple with those carbohydrates. I also like to recommend avoiding adding too much of the carbs coming from fruit, because oftentimes if you're someone who does struggle with GI issues, additional or high amounts of fructose, the sugar fructose coming from fruit, can cause GI issues, such as looser stools. For some people, it can be gas or bloating. So if you are somebody who struggles with GI issues, I would say this is one you might want to not get all your carbs coming from fruit. Continue with carb loading, that timeline, 3 to 4 days before the race, you would increase that carbohydrate intake, not to the number that we drastically saw, but you would increase it. Usually this is around taper time and everything. So you would increase that intake 1 day before the race. That's when you are hitting that 8 to 12 grams per kilogram of body weight. If you're hitting that point, that high level, high carb meals. So high carbs at breakfast, snacks, lunch, snack, dinner. That's what you're looking for, is high carb throughout the day. Not only carb, high carb meals. So making sure you're still getting a balance in there is important as well, specifically for GI comfort. Nothing new. We hear this all the time. Nothing new in the taper week. So this includes carb loading. Once again, keep it easy to digest as well. Race day morning, eat a smaller carb-focused breakfast 2 to 3 hours before the start of the event. So this can be pancakes, waffles, bread, toast. This can be adding a little fruit too, maybe like a banana, adding in maybe apple juice or a sports nutrition drink. Lots of different ways that you can help get a little bit more carbs before the actual start of the race. Now, specifically, I like to tell people to try to do, starting off with that meal, usually trying to hit a minimum of 60 grams of carbs for that meal, that breakfast on that morning of, but you can go all the way up to 120 grams of carbs for that meal if you've worked your way to that point before the race. Don't just dive into 120 grams, work your way up to it. So carb loading works for both males and females. I know there's a lot of different information out there, and there was a time when I even said differently, but it does work well for males and females. It's not just one or the other, for seeing benefits of additional glycogen in the muscle for the activity. So everybody can take advantage of this. Beginners pre-fuel. So what I mean by this is looking at, okay, what is the base level? If I am somebody who, maybe you are a new runner, maybe you are somebody who's always struggled to do any sort of nutrition, food, anything prior to the start of a run or a race, this would be you in this category. Or somebody who is experiencing GI issues, but then also maybe kind of pulling back on what you've typically done before an actual run. So you would start 1 hour before an actual run. So give yourself a little more time than the 30 to 60 minutes. And then you would choose a food from that simple carbohydrate list, aiming for about the 30 grams of carbs. Primarily, if this is you starting off, this is where you want to start. So an example would maybe be like half a banana an hour prior. If you can tolerate a whole banana, that's great too. But we like to start people off slow when we're doing pre-fuel. Do this for 1 week for at least 3/4 of your runs. then increase the quantity of carbs over this time, not the actual time. So keep it to an hour before, and so sorry guys, slowly increase the amount of carbohydrates you're taking in. So that's something that you can kind of do there. Real quick, I'm gonna have a cough drop, guys. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold. So this is a beginner's pre-fuel kind of option here. You guys can kind of use as an example. I also wanted to add in a summer training tip because I am based here in Chicago, Illinois, and we get hot and humid and everything. And so I see a lot of runners who deal with runner's diarrhea. Sorry, guys. Deal with runner's diarrhea, deal with a lot of different things. And so doing a pre-fuel that is liquid helps to hydrate and also avoid that runner's diarrhea that can eventually happen. So this is good for across the board, but summertime it's the best. Okay. Bear with me, guys. Sorry, I didn't realize that my throat was going to be so fragile tonight. During runs, who should be doing fueling during their runs? Everybody. Does not matter your pace, doesn't matter the distance, in certain respects, that everyone should be kind of taking in fuel during their runs. You want to aim for 30 to 90 grams of carbs per hour during a run. Now, this can range, but that's a good baseline to kind of start with. You only really need to do these for runs or races that are over 60 to 90 minutes. The most of the time you might hear 90 minutes. And 90 minutes is kind of the standard and most of the time the recommendation. The reason that I included 60 minutes is because oftentimes we might be out there for 60, 75 minutes. We could use a little extra energy for those runs to help us recover a little bit better. So that's why I always oftentimes say between 60 and 90 is the best bet, not just the 90 covered general recommendation. Now, one of the many things that we oftentimes see is this idea of gels versus food versus fuel. And what I mean by food is like whole foods based options. So this is a common debate. Now, from my standpoint as a sports nutritionist, dietitian, I go based off of what is best for the individual, for the race. So a lot of it is preference.
Lydia, I was going to ask, do you need to take a moment to get any like a hot tea or anything? Like, we can wait. It's totally okay.
I will power through. I'm sorry, guys. Like I said, I didn't know that this was, I'm like at the tail end and I was doing fine all day. And maybe it's just like the talking.
Okay. I don't want you to suffer.
No. It's all good. It's all
I'm
good.
so uncomfortable. Okay.
I'm sorry. I feel like it's suffering you guys hearing me coughing all the time. So I apologize. But it's really about convenience. What are you carrying on yourself? What are you carrying? What's the distance? What's the intensity? These are all things that are going to be playing into your decision if you want to use gels, if you want to use food or liquid. Now, when we're talking about GI specific things, there's different factors that I like to take into account as well beyond just kind of preference here. First being digestion speed. So this is specific about GI comfort. So gels and liquid are going to be very fast digestion, very quick, very easy. So that is one of the benefits for that. If somebody struggles with digestion of items. Whole foods have a little bit slower of a digestion, mainly because they are going to have some fiber. So it makes it a little bit harder. Portability, meaning carrying, convenience, that piece of it. Gels, really easy, convenient most of the time. Whole foods and liquid, a little bit harder to kind of navigate carrying it. If you're in certain distances or certain types of races, they can be a little bit harder to navigate. So that's something to kind of consider as well. Now, for ultra runners, multi-day athletes, whole foods liquid might be a little bit easier to carry because you have more, you have your vest, you have a belt, you have different things. You have different things you can carry those whole foods on you. So that can make a big difference there too. Carb precision. So this is kind of making sure you're getting the right amount of carbohydrates at the right times. So gels, really easy to calculate it, really easy to make sure you're getting enough of that precision of carbohydrate, as well as the type of carb, making sure that it is balanced with, fructose or maltodextrin and all these different things. So that's one thing that makes them a little bit higher for carb precision. Whole foods, variable. We can't be precise with carbohydrates necessarily. So it's a little bit more variable with whole foods, but you can still reach the carb needs that were recommended prior to or during races. So that's not too hard to do. For liquids, this becomes a little bit more difficult oftentimes. You can get carb precision, but there's the exact amount of liquid to the powder and all of those different factors there. So it's a little more moderate as well. Maybe a little bit variable as well. Stomach tolerance. This is very mixed, oftentimes with gels. The world of gels for running is vast now. Used to just be goos. Now we have a lot of different options out there. So some people really do well. A lot of people do well with gels. Some people just don't do well. And honestly, there's probably a higher percentage of people who don't do well. So it's very mixed with stomach tolerance. Whole foods, oftentimes the reason people go to Whole Foods for their during run fuel is because it's a little bit better stomach tolerance. Liquid is a little better than gels, but not as good as Whole Foods. So kind of thinking it as like gels might be the hardest, then liquids, and Whole Foods might be the best. So this is a nice little table for you to kind of keep in mind as well. So carbs versus calories. This is oftentimes a debate for during your runs. I always say carbs are more ideal to look at over calories, just because your body tends, especially for GI specific, if somebody struggles with GI, I'd rather them focus on carbs over calories, because oftentimes doing a super big mixture of different macros actually can be more difficult for the GI than just straight carbs. Once again, carbs 30 to 90 grams per hour. If we're doing calories, because I don't want to just negate that like people wouldn't, then it would be about 120 to 360 calories per hour on average. This can be very individualized. If you're a multi-day athlete, multi-event type of thing, so this can vary, but this is a good baseline. Like I said, if you have GI issues, then carbs are always often better than calories. When would you add protein? So this is a common question I get. And protein would be added into your routine for during an event if the event is going to last over 2.5 hours. So this does not mean that you that your event, if it doesn't last 2 hours, you wouldn't benefit from having a little bit of carb. But ultimately, the research shows us that protein added after the 2.5 mark helps to avoid muscle breakdown. So how would you do that? You would add about 5 to 10 grams of protein per hour. So that's like a good rule of thumb for 2.5 hours or multi-day 24-hour types of events. This also can be beneficial for individuals with GI issues if they are out there for a little bit longer. Okay, ingredients to avoid. I'm actually just going to put them all up here so you guys can see them. Oops. So ingredients to avoid. So these are ingredients that you want to avoid if you are someone who does struggle with GI issues. And when I say GI issues, this can be acid reflux, heartburn, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, all of these. These are the common ingredient culprits, because there's many culprits, but from a food standpoint, these are the common culprits for causing those types of GI, upper and lower GI issues. So look at not just your gels, but look at the foods you're consuming close to runs and see if they have any of these. So I know this is recorded. Take a screenshot of this. Take a photo of this. Look at your bars you're consuming. Look at your protein drinks you're consuming. If you are somebody who struggles with GI issues, one of these could be a culprit for causing that. So these are all good things to kind of keep in mind. Once again, everyone should be post-fuel, getting in some refuel. The recommended ratio is 2 to 3 parts carb to 1 part protein. So this would mean if you were doing 60-gram carb, then you would want about 20-gram protein. Example of certain recovery foods: protein milk or chocolate milk, yogurt, and fruit, a smoothie with protein, eggs and rice, or chicken. Lots of different options you can do there. Ideally, you want to do this recovery within 30 to 60 minutes after you're done with your exercise. Now, I often get the question, I do my run, and then I do a strength workout, because we as runners always do our strength, right? Yes. So when should I do my refuel? Your refuel would happen after your strength. It would not be before the strength happened. So refuel is really after you're done with your entire exercise event. Okay. Common things that can come up. Heartburn with gels. A couple of people have experienced this. I've had athletes experience this. So if this is something you struggle with, I recommend that you choose gels that eliminate citric acid or even fructose or anything that's acidic. Try to avoid the caffeine before the run as well as in the run. Bloating or gas. This is something that sometimes people can deal with. Check your digestion. And what I mean by that is check to see what foods could be impacting you. Maybe there's something outside of the run that you're having difficulty digesting. Beans, lentils, broccoli, cauliflower, anything like that that could be affecting your run with these symptoms. Also, you want to avoid carbonated beverages and avoid high sugar content, as these can also affect gas or bloating. Sloshing stomach. We've all kind of dealt with this at some point, probably. To try to treat this, you want to make sure you're hydrating with electrolytes and carbs. Ideally, a 6 to 8 percentile concentration of carbohydrate. And what that means, for example, is 14 to 15 grams per 8 ounces of a drink that you're having. So these are some of the common ones that we oftentimes see. The most common one, so number 4, would be runner's trots or runner's diarrhea is another one. So this can oftentimes come up mid-run. This is oftentimes something we see either halfway or 3/4 of the way through a run. Everyone's treatment's different, but I recommend trying these different factors. Limit your fiber and your fat intake. If you're a caffeine person, try to limit it leading into specific runs, especially crucial runs. Limit artificial sweeteners, especially 24 hours prior to runs. Ensure you're hydrating with electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium, prior to runs, as well as during runs. Eat and drink carbs during your runs. Keep it bland. Don't get fancy. Keep it bland. Include carbohydrates during your actual runs, aiming for every 30 minutes. You might think this would do the opposite, but it actually helps prevent the diarrhea. And then avoid gels or food with fat coming from nut butters or coconut butters. You might think that doing more whole foods based gels or foods could help, but it actually does the opposite when it comes to runner's diarrhea. So this is a really common one. I'm going to leave this here for a second. I'll be right back, guys. Okay. Okay. So that was actually, that was the end there of the actual slide deck that I had. So we did have one question that came in before, but this is the time to kind of open up for questions. I think good. We have plenty of 25 minutes or so for questions now. So the first question that kind of came in was living in humid environments in your training and those differences. Do you have to make adjustments for your electrolytes and for your fluids? The answer is yes. I would recommend, if you are somebody who does train primarily in humid environments, you want to do a sweat test. You want to kind of see where your sodium concentration needs are, because most likely you are a higher sodium concentration loss person. So you lose more concentration of sodium in more humid environments. Generally speaking, that's most of the time. You're also most likely somebody who might lose more fluid. Not all the time, but in more humid conditions, you might lose more fluid. So a lot of times those go hand in hand, but not for everybody. So this is why it's hard to do a general recommendation. And I usually say do a sweat test. Super basic sweat tests out there. I usually recommend like a baseline one. I don't know, Asher, do you recommend any sort of sweat tests for your athletes?
We used to even do the generic like Gatorade one or whatever that they like phased out. So there's not one specific one that we go to now because that one was so accessible financially.
Yep.
That I mean, I haven't heard of one that is that readily available to everybody. It usually is kind of a little bit more of an investment. Do you know of other recommendations that you have or that you've seen around that have been good?
Most of them are the higher level ones too. Gatorade, I think you can still kind of get them and access them because I think they're still using them with some of the pro athletes. But it's hard. It is harder to find those because yeah, you're right. They are just like the more accessible, financially specific ones. I would say not really. It's a big jump, but NIX is probably the next financially available option that people can use.
Yeah, Gatorade I found, like if you actually look at running stores, they'll sometimes have them a little bit like just they'll have them in stock, when online it's really difficult to sometimes get them in without some kind of exorbitant like shipping cost.
Yeah.
To like kind of delve into the question a little bit more, unless you had some other thing. If a person is coming from more of a dry climate and then they're racing in a humid environment where they don't have the chance to do that like specific sweat test in those conditions, obviously humidity is going to have a major effect on, you know, like what we do as far as mitigation in general. But is there like, I know you said there's not really a general outline, but like, is there something that you usually suggest? Like if you're doing that, then it is safe to add 4 ounces of water per hour to your intake, or something that won't overload the system, but will give some amount of increased availability to the body, either with like electrolytes or fluids in general.
Yes. So I would say if you're going from dry to humid, you probably have trained in some heat. So you had some heat training. So what I would say is that typically when you go from dry to humid, you could safely add about I'd like to give ranges, 2 to 4 ounces of fluid in addition to what you're used to taking in your kind of racing game plan.
Okay. That's great. Do you make any changes as far as like if they're taking salt tabs or whatever it might be, like, do you make adjustments to that intake as well?
Most of the time I would say keep that fairly much the same, because that one is so variable that shifting that one too much can sometimes be a struggle area. So I tend to focus more on the fluid when it's that kind of situation where it's somebody who's going from dry to humid.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll let someone else take it. Yeah, go ahead, Arlie.
Hi, thanks, Lydia. I wanted to ask 2 questions. So the protein one actually surprised me. I mean, I know people do it, but I have not been taking protein because I thought it would mess up my stomach. And some folks I know do it, but now I'm afraid to start. My race is in a week and a half. So, and I have my first 100-miler hopefully in mid-June. So would you suggest to like skip for the next week and a half and try to test it for June?
Yeah, I would not add it in for the next week and a half for the next race, but for the 100-miler, looking at what protein foods you could partner with your aid station kind of planning. But yes, I think that would be beneficial to add in there. If you're nervous about the 5 to 10 grams, just do, 1 to 4 grams, keep it on the lower end. But any form of protein for especially a 100-miler will help to avoid any like muscle breakdown and things like that. So what I always say to people with those like long endurance events, make a list of your favorite protein foods and try to incorporate that into your aid station like food options, because sometimes you might crave something that is more protein rich as you go along, and that's also not only from a GI standpoint but also just like overall wellness standpoint in your racing as well.
Is there like a recommended amount like we have for carbs, or is it more by feel?
So I like to say about feel, but the amount I would say is between the recommendation is 5 to 10 grams per hour. But like I said, if that's very nerve-wracking for you to kind of get that in, then do more of like the 1 to 5 grams per hour.
Got it. I know bagels have like 10 grams of protein sometimes. Is that a good option?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's a great example, is it doesn't have to be a specific protein food, but it can be a food that also has protein.
And some people use recovery drinks. Would you recommend that?
I would hesitate to use recovery drinks during an event. Use them more for after the event.
Interesting. Do you know why like some people like them, like Ensure or Goo Recovery?
Oh, like Ensures or Boosts or those types of drinks?
Yeah, like shakes that are meal shakes, stuff like that.
So those I would say are less I would say less recovery. Like those are good from a recovery standpoint, but they're a complete meal. So those would be fine to use when you're in your event or after the event. When you said recovery drink, I'm thinking like Core Power, those high protein kind of all in one kind of drinks. And those are better for after. But like an Ensure or a Boost or something in that like meal replacement where it's balanced, that is fine to use for those any event that's kind of over that like 4 hours kind of range.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. It's usually a nice and convenient way to get in some nutrition too.
Yeah, people put them in drop bags, or put the packets for Goo Recovery and then mix them up. Yeah, but I don't think I'll try that until I do it in training. Until
you do it in training, absolutely. Yeah, all this comes down to you want to practice it. Like you want to see what small amount you can tolerate, and then how to build it up, because the goal to get to that higher level is not to just hit that number, but it's to feel your strongest, recover your fastest. Like that is what would happen if you were to hit those higher numbers in those ranges.
Okay, cool. And then the other question I had was about the runs. It's really good you gave these tips. Limiting fiber and fat, I think is key for me. But I know some people, like just talking on runs, people take Pepto-Bismol and Imodium. And I think we talked about Imodium and you told me no. But I know people do it. So if I avoid all those and still get the runs, what should I do?
I mean, Imodium, or I would say Imodium more than Pepto, is more commonly used. I would say that use it in a trial run first. Like use it in a training run once again if you're planning on using it. The thing is, you have to keep in mind is oftentimes that means you need to hydrate a little more. So you need to add a little more to your hydration if you're going to take in that medication.
Got it.
So you just have to like, yeah, you can use those things oftentimes, but that's going to change your fueling strategies. That's going to change how much hydration you might need. So practice with it and then adjust as needed. There's not an exact amount of hydration needed. You just kind of have to adjust a little bit, add a little to what you normally do.
Is there anything that's not these medications? Because I have never tried them and I don't want to really, like, if there's anything else I can do, then that's better.
I mean, they're like not a, you can, I mean, I would really say just avoiding those types of foods, and not just the fiber or the fat, but like carbonated beverages. If you're finding that like it's not a high fiber food, but like I mentioned, broccoli. People love broccoli. Broccoli is also really healthy for you. But guess what? Broccoli can cause diarrhea in runners because it is a FODMAP food.
Yeah.
So kind of look at like maybe what you're like a food journal. Keep an eye on like, okay, maybe it's not fat or fiber. Maybe it's something different. Maybe it's garlic. Maybe it's onion.
Oh, that's hard to eliminate.
Exactly. So just kind of like look at what, but like we don't know that that's it. Could be avocado. Like that's sometimes looking at that for some people. Going back to that list of ingredients to avoid, I had a runner who was having GI issues. We looked at everything, couldn't figure it out. Coming to find out, she was eating a lot of Kind bars. Guess what? Kind bars had a lot of the, I think it was the gum in it for the fiber, or for to kind of hold everything together, and that was causing her issue. The minute we took out just Kind bars, boom, she was fine. So sometimes it's something that we think is very healthy for us, but we have to kind of dive deeper. Doesn't mean we have to eliminate a ton of things, but you have to eliminate potentially for a short period to see how things are adjusting.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I was gonna say thank you for providing the protein options, because in my brain I was like, somebody's just gonna open like a tuna packet like on the run like that. I mean, maybe in an ultra, I don't know, but I was like, that doesn't sound appealing. But thank you for talking about the other options, because I was like, oh yeah, those sound like much better ideas.
Yeah, and I would say too, like if you're somebody who, like fruit purees, you want to be cautious about them. But like, once again, coming from being now a mom of a 1-year-old, fruit pouches, they do make some that have little bits of protein in them. So if that's something you added to your routine, you get a good amount of carb and then you get a little protein with it. So that's another way of doing those purees. It's easily accessible and helpful for you to actually get in kind of all the things you're looking for maybe it's whole foods based, maybe it's getting a little protein in. So it kind of checks all the boxes.
I don't want to take away from anybody who has a question here, but I do have a couple questions from other people who have not been able to make it. So if anybody actually has a question right now, please feel free.
I have a question.
Great.
I had never thought about the gums that are in these products before until I saw your slide on that. Just in doing a little bit of like Googling on the side here, it feels like a pretty large proportion of sports nutrition products have those. I'm kind of curious how much you've found that to be an issue for folks, generally speaking, and what alternatives you tend to recommend. It looked like the Carbs brand and Morton were two like common ones that I saw that did not have gums in them, but there weren't actually that many.
Yeah, so that is something that has come up more in the recent years, I'd say. And that's one of the reasons that Morton and Carbs are considered, like, their marketing is like better GI. Not everybody gets better GI, I will say that, but they tend to have better GI. I mean, the way to navigate around that is to either go for those that don't have the gum or do more whole foods that doesn't have that either. Unfortunately, just like in our food culture, that gargum is going to be more common in not just like our sports nutrition, but also in our just everyday snacks and foods and things like that that are more, I wouldn't say ultra processed, but could be just processed too. So when I'm saying that too, and when I'm saying that list to avoid, that is if you are somebody who does have a sensitive stomach, who struggles with GI issues. If you're somebody who doesn't, has an iron stomach or just totally fine, you can eat that and that's not going to cause you any problems. If you are somebody who does have that more sensitive stomach, my recommendation would be try to avoid it 2 days, 3 days prior to crucial runs. You know, it doesn't have to be your easy runs all the time, but you know, if your long runs are on Saturday, maybe don't eat products that have it starting on Thursday. So it doesn't have to be a complete elimination if that's hard to do, but it can be a way of adjusting to make sure you're still able to get in your quality runs without any issues.
Just to kind of piggyback off of that a little bit, when you're talking about gels specifically, I have one person who struggles a lot with like palate fatigue, especially as she gets into longer events. But she likes to lean on gels just because of the convenience factor. Are there any others? I mean, I know Morton and like, you know, there's some that are pretty bland, but like, are there any that you find for your athletes? Do you have a, you know, list offhand that you just are like, hey, these are usually pretty simple on GI and they have a light flavor or no flavor that I can give her?
I have a diagram that I can send with kind of what to choose. But I do think actually I have a list of like bland ones, like unflavored, because they're not as common that I did give to an athlete before. So I can message those over to you too to share with her.
That'd be great. Because I mean, we all have it, but there's gels popping up like left and right now too. And I don't know what's working well with your athletes. So that'd be great.
And I'd say too, like I also recommend, because there are so many different products out there, I like to use like websites like The Feed to filter things.
Yeah.
So filter the types of carb source. You know, maybe it's like, hey, I know I have GI issues. Maybe I should make sure I don't have something that has fructose in it. You know, maybe make sure I don't have any sugar like alternatives in there. So that's sometimes nice to use those big websites to kind of filter and see what's there.
For sure. And then when it comes to, I mean, I know caffeine is a potential irritant too. When it comes to utilizing, I'll be quick, Leslie. When it comes to utilizing caffeine for the performance benefits, we're talking mostly like later stage, like marathon, and then of course ultra marathoning stuff. How do you generally recommend starting to balance potential irritation, like the risk of that, with the reward of the performance benefits that you get from layering that in?
So I would say if there's someone who's not a avid caffeine drinker, like outside of running, focus on hydration strategies first. And if you can get your hydration strategies pretty confident, then adding in caffeine later on in a run shouldn't have as much of effect. Because oftentimes that's the reason it's an irritant, is because not because it's dehydrating, because caffeine's not a dehydrator.
Yeah.
It's because if you are already in a state of, I wouldn't say severe dehydration, but if you're already going to put yourself in a place where you're fairly dehydrated later on in a run, then you have caffeine, that's just going to send it over the edge. So work on hydration strategies first, then adding in caffeine should have less of a damaging effect.
Good tip. Go ahead, Leslie. I'll let you have the floor.
Yeah. So I feel like they're not as trendy anymore, but UCAN was like all the rage for a while as being like a non-carb fueling source. What's the science on that? Like, does it work? I mean, obviously if somebody has like diabetes, maybe yes, like a good idea for them or something like that, but in general.
Yes. So you're exactly right. If someone has like diabetes, it is a great option to kind of utilize. It's also one of those as well that they have an unflavored, like they're one of the few brands that does have an unflavored option. Also, too, you don't have to use as much of them. So if you're somebody who struggles to get, like, if someone is using UCAN, they don't need to be hitting that 90 grams per kilogram of body, or 90 grams of carb per hour range. You're probably hitting closer to like maybe 60, if even that. So it's, if you want to carry a little less on you, then that's also where it can come into a benefit for individuals. But if it is somebody, also if you're somebody too who is not a large carb eater, so I like to be inclusive of what their day-to-day nutritional intake is. If you're somebody who maybe eats a lower carb day-to-day meals and snacks, then UCAN might be a good option for your in-run fuel to still give you carbohydrates, but not necessarily be super high in simple sugars that your body might not be as used to because of your day-to-day diet. Which is a whole nother conversation about your day-to-day diet.
Right.
But if that is where you're at,
but that makes
then
sense too, right? Like potentially if they don't eat a lot of carbs and then all of a sudden they're like chugging carbs, like they're gonna have digestive distress, right? Like that's another issue. So okay.
And it's thinking about this. It's thinking about, like, it's a simple sugar. Most gels are
Mhm.
simple sugar.
For
And
sure.
then UCAN is a super starch. So starch is going to digest differently than a simple sugar.
Mhm.
So yeah. Good question though. Because you're right. UCAN used to was all
It
the
was
rage.
so trendy, but now it's like I just like don't hear anything.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Arlie.
Another question I just thought about. So I did some experiments on my recent trail runs taking Stroop waffles. They don't sit very well, but just trying to experiment, I took Tums, like antacid, and that helped. But I wanted to know, like, is there anything I need to notice if I do this during the race? Like drink more, eat less? If I need
Yes.
to take antacids? Yeah.
If you notice, so different things, like if you notice, if you're in a run or in a race and you notice that, like, let's say it's like nausea or a little upset stomach, oftentimes a lot of people stop taking anything in, and that's like not necessarily where you want to go. I always say first line of defense, do an electrolyte or carb type of beverage. So something that's going to check the boxes of getting some energy in, getting electrolytes and fluids in, because a lot of times the first culprit is usually some form of like slight dehydration that's causing a little bit of upset stomach for individuals.
Mm.
Now, the Stroop waffles, if those are what are causing it, then maybe it could be a sensitivity to like honey or that type of Stroop waffle. So there's also that too. So then it could be like the specific type of ingredients in there. But I would say first line of defense, get a beverage that checks the boxes of a carbohydrate, a electrolytes, and then fluids as well. And just kind of try to sip on that. Don't chug it, but sip on that for like 30 minutes or so throughout a run. See how you feel. And then if you're starting to subside, then you don't have to keep going at that same pace, but you can kind of try to get back into your regular game plan, fueling plan for the actual run.
Oh, so are you saying to not take Tums?
Oh, I mean, you can if that's like what I'm saying from like a Whole Foods based like management. That's how I would manage it. But absolutely, like I don't think there's anything wrong with necessarily if you're used to using Tums and things like that. My thing is that if you have the time, I would not say this for your upcoming race, but if you have the time, try to kind of figure out, well, what's causing that GI issue? Because Tums or Imodium oftentimes just kind of layering over what potentially could be a culprit that you could potentially like solve and eliminate, which then would also like benefit you in your racing mentally as well, because then you wouldn't be worried about, oh, okay, do I have my Tums? Do I have my Imodium in case something happens? Okay. Because that's also too, like, I'm not saying you can't use those. They are good tools and they are available. But if you have the time and availability, let's try to find the root of the cause so we can potentially solve that, and that's not a culprit anymore. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
I think it's just the digesting while going downhill. There's just a lot of bouncing that makes the stomach acids not sit well, and then it hurts.
Yeah.
And
That sloshing
usually
feeling, is that kind of like
it's cramps in the stomach, basically.
cramps in the stomach? Okay.
Yeah, and then when I take the antacid, it stops after like 5-10 minutes, which is pretty fast.
Yeah, that is
But
pretty.
I'm just gonna avoid actual food, and hopefully it doesn't happen. But if I do need to take Tums or something, you're saying there's nothing like I understand it could hide something, but do I need to?
No,
do
Tums
anything?
is usually a little bit okay, like in terms of you don't need to adjust your nutritional like strategy if you do take Tums. It's
Okay.
more like Imodium would be the one that you would have to adjust a little bit.
Okay. Hopefully I don't need any of them, but
Yeah.
just in case.
Yeah, no, it's always it's always good to have it just in case.
Thanks.
Unless anyone has any quick questions that they want to sneak in before, I do want to be respectful of Lydia's time, and it is 6:32. This has been really great. Thank you. I mean, like the presentation was wonderful, and then just getting into a little bit more the nitty-gritty of people's individual areas of opportunity has been great. So we always really appreciate you coming on, and I'm very thankful for you this time too.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
And like GI is a very complicated thing to deal with. It's so individualized. So yeah, if you do have any additional questions or you want to dive deeper into it, just, reach out either to me, or Asher can also send you my way as well if needed. So I'm happy to help with that.
Yeah, thank you everyone else too. Thank you for joining and for making this a really good session.
Yes.
So have a good night, everybody. We'll chat soon. Thank you, Lydia.
You're welcome. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Why is only one person left?